James Smith from Farmer Hyundai. Can you see us now? You mentioned that you couldn't. James Smith from Farmer Hyundai. Can you see us now? You mentioned that you couldn't. Oh, yes, apparently we can. That's excellent. And I'm just going to copy this. As always, everyone, for colleagues that can't view the Zoom meeting, I'm in the chat window now, putting the YouTube link where they can watch it live, and also if they want to ask questions through there as well. So that's available for colleagues who can't access Zoom, and that's also being emailed out to everyone now at the moment as well. Right, numbers are still ticking over, but I think we kind of need to kick off now. Welcome everyone, and thank you to the next of our AutoTalk Talks. Today we're going to talk about online listings. I think the specific title of what we're doing today is Perfecting Vehicle Listings and Building Trust Online. Now, just quickly to go through a little bit of housekeeping before I do the introductions. If you've got any questions during the event, feel free to use the Q&A function on the Zoom window you've got there, or there's also a Q&A function as well if you look down at the bottom of your screen. If you are watching us on the YouTube link, and I see the numbers rising on there pretty quickly at the moment, then you can ask through the chat function there. If all of that fails, then please do send a question to richard@automediagroup.co.nz. We will generally leave the Q&A to the end of the thing, but if we see a question pop up during the event that we think is particularly relevant, we'll get to it fairly early in the process. Thanks for coming. You've hopefully been to a few of our seminars last week. Hopefully now everyone's back at work. Of course, it's an interesting time for the industry trying to work out and learn how to trade within level 3. Hopefully what we're doing today, you might have a few more ideas around what you need to be doing and a few little more details you need to polish. So I'll go to our panelists now. We've got two really great experts online with us today. From Trade Me Motors, we've got North Island Sales Manager Ange Humble, or Angela Humble. We'll stick with Ange today. Is that the best way to go, Ange?
Yeah, that's good.
And from Motor Central, who are known for their Motor Central virtual DMS product and Bioscore and the Need a Car website, we've got General Manager Mark Greenfield. Thanks, Mark, for coming along.
A pleasure, Richard. Thank you.
So we'll start out, I guess, and it's something we've touched on a couple of times in the last couple of sessions we've done. Here we're today talking about perfecting your leads, dealing with your online reputation and trustworthiness. I mean, just really quickly, guys, this is something that dealers who are doing well have been doing for a long time, but it's really starting to crystallize that this stuff is important in this new COVID world. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more than a fair statement, Richard. I think, firstly, I think we're pretty grateful to be in the industry that we're in, and that we can kind of kick things off and restart again, and have a degree of empathy for those in travel and tourism and all the rest of it. So the motor industry's always been pretty resilient, and I think this is no different, and we'll kind of hustle back into it and get it underway. But what you're saying about the way to, I guess, as far as the importance of handling your online presence and how you operate these days, is it's always been really important, and the ones that have done it well have always done it pretty good. But where there's an opportunity is the people that now have to evolve their business, where they've been very successful face to face with their customers. It's really now about evolving it to do the best they can online and actually sell online, engage with customers online, build relationships online, and then hopefully have that convert into a sale. But there's some, I guess, best practices that should be deployed across the industry, and I think this is now an opportunity for people to kind of enhance and improve in a few areas there, and I think they'll come out the back of it better than ever before. And I think we'll see a lot more conversion down the track of opportunities than what we would have in the past, because just the level of importance and level of engagement that people will now have.
Is that your take on it as well, Ange? I mean, are you guys expecting that dealers will start to really engage with what they're doing online through sites like TradeMe and others?
Yeah, we're thinking that, the strongest people will be the people that spend this extra time that they've got on their hands, making their online listings better across the board. And those will be the people that come out flying.
Mm-hmm. Now, I guess before we talk about what people should be having in their listings and how to get those things nailed down, I think it's a really good time to talk about what buyers are actually doing and what the buyers want. I understand you guys have done some fairly up-to-date research around this. Just to start off, I mean, what are the top things car buyers are looking for or are considering when they're getting ready to purchase?
Well, we've just recently engaged with a company who intensely questioned about 1,000 buyers who had recently purchased vehicles and accumulated just a huge amount of new information about Kiwi car buyers. So we've just never had more analytical data for dealerships than we do right now. And our team have spent this lockdown period just combing through this research and pulling out ways that we can boost the dealers' businesses. But a couple of key things that car buyers are considering when they're purchasing a vehicle was number one was price. Everybody knows that's a pretty big one, but what came out of that was that 86% of people didn't actually buy the lowest priced vehicle. Number two was safety, and number three was kilometers driven. So people are really searching for a safe vehicle at the right price, but they are willing to spend a bit more. 40% of those, I think the stat was, actually spent over their budget. So it's not all about the cheapest car; it's about the right vehicle for the right price.
Which makes telling that story about the vehicle itself more important, really. I mean, if they're looking for the right vehicle rather than just, you kind of get that impression, I think, sometimes of people just filing by price and going to the bottom, but it doesn't appear to be the case when you look at the statistics. Can
I just jump in there, Richard? It's really interesting that the number that you came to is 86%, Ange?
86% do not buy the lowest price vehicle,
Yeah, that's interesting. The data that we've got that sits around people that are surveyed that didn't purchase from the original dealership that they made contact with, they've test driven a vehicle and gone and purchased somewhere else. On the last 1,000 customers that we've got that information back from, and the component of buyer score, only 17% of those didn't buy because of price. And there's all these other factors. So it's, I don't know, I think that's kind of, we have not talked about this at all. It's very, your 86% or whatever it is, that's basically saying 14%, or you know what I mean? Like, so it's a really small percentage that didn't buy because of price or purchased because of price. So they kind of, it says there's a lot more going on in a buyer's decision than price yet. It's probably still an area that's focused quite heavily on from a dealership perspective, and it's not, they focus on price being the main objection, but it's in most cases, as I guess the data we have from BuyerScore and the data that Ange has got from that survey, it supports the fact that it's not the most important thing.
No, and we're encouraging people, to regularly review their sourcing and their pricing, so they can keep up with market trends and customer demand and regulation changes across the board. So, the best dealers are doing that now.
It definitely shows they should be putting that effort into how they present those vehicles, as opposed to just making sure that of the 5 of their type of car in the area, that they are the bottom price. It could be that they are the best photographed car. It could be that they are the vehicle that they've displayed the specs or the attributes of the beast.
Sorry, where you go? No, you go,
No,
Matt.
you go.
So I have a little stat here. 70% of people rated descriptions of the features and the benefits as the most important attribute that they wanted to read or see online. The vehicle history and high quality of photos, of course, and high number of photos as well. So just adding all of those in and making sure that people are putting time into this extra time that they have into writing really good descriptions. You know, what will people ask you if they came on the yard? Writing that in your online listing.
Yeah.
Yep.
But what are buyers specifically looking for when they're purchasing from a dealer from your guys' analysis?
We have top 3 ones, and they were very, very clear that they were top 3 was trustworthy seller, you know, dealing with someone they really trusted and found competent, easy communication and convenience. So somebody that provides trade-ins and finance. 25% of people that purchased didn't even know that dealership provided finance. So just really making sure that you're putting everything about your business in there, with the car as a first priority, because people are buying the car, not your business, but putting all of those extra parts in were really important for those buyers.
So I guess if we're structuring up kind of the ideal listing, and you know, typical Kiwi bloke, I spent a lot of time perusing the listings on Trade Me Motors, even when I'm not out going to buy, and I'm sure a lot of us here are like that. And you see so many listings where you get about 1 line on the car and then 18 pages on the dealership. From what your statistics are showing, that's not really the direction you should be going in. I mean, if you kind of had to list down and break down what should be in your ideal listing, what would you be putting in there?
I would expect a really good description of the vehicle, what benefits or special features that the vehicle might have, and not just in a bullet point list, maybe talking about that vehicle in a couple of sentences, so it's really nice and easy and clear to read. So that comes back to that easy communication part that we were talking about. So a couple of sentences around maybe the vehicle history, how many kilometers it's driven, what kind of condition it is inside and outside, and an honest one, because this is the trustworthy dealership part as well.
What should you be saying about your own dealership in that listing as well? I mean, as we said, some of them have that big chunk there normally, but I mean, how much really should you be putting in and talking about your additional services, or should it be entirely about that vehicle?
No, I think you know, finance, warranties, trade-ins, that, you know, they're all very important. A little bit about the business and about the company, what kind of staff you have. You know, they're very competent and trustworthy and honest, and they understand vehicles. I think sort of measuring everything as well. So making meaningful changes when something does come up that is not right.
Mark, you guys obviously work with listings through your Motor Central system. What kind of content do you advise your customers put in there on kind of, you know, how much about the car, how much about the dealership, how much about your services? Have you got a metric on that?
Yeah, there's actually lots of information, I guess, on that I could have probably provided if we're kind of going down this track. But I'll kind of look back to a couple of things that stand out really. The one that Ange touched on at the start was, you know, you got the quality of photos and presentation of the vehicle. That's an area that's a really interesting one, with, you know, the photos that are online of the car are usually from when it's been first well groomed. It looks amazing. But the dissatisfaction that a potential purchaser has when they arrive on the dealership to look at that vehicle and it hasn't been groomed or cleaned as well as it could have been for a while, that's definitely a big put off factor for people, for sure. So I think it's really presentation. Actually, if I grab some data, presentation. Yeah, so if I look at the 47% of people that went and didn't buy the car that they test drove and went and purchased somewhere else was around vehicle presentation. Was in their vehicle presentation, disliked the vehicle after test drive, and the vehicle wasn't quite right. That's a pretty big chunk of people, and you have to respect the fact that in this day and age, they're doing all this research online. They're looking at maybe 6 dealerships, maybe up to 8 dealerships, whatever the number is, and refining that down to the 2 or 3 cars that they're going to go and inspect. And that's your opportunity. So when they turn up, they're not necessarily going from dealership to dealership to dealership. So that's your opportunity. And if they turn up and the vehicle's presented poorly or hasn't been cleaned for a couple of weeks, you just start putting them off. And then the dealership that they arrive at and the vehicle is incredibly well presented, it's ready for that test drive, they're the one that's going to win the business most of the time. So yeah, I think that's really important. And the other thing I want to mention there is on the vehicle description. It's a great thing that Ange talks about, putting some sort of description in about the vehicle and not just a big blurb about the dealership. Getting a little bit more emotive about the car is a really important thing. I know everybody sees vehicles all day, every day in their dealership, and they get a little bit complacent about vehicles. But when you look at the private listing that sits on TradeMe, some of these private sellers write very emotive descriptions about how good the vehicle's been for the family, that it can take their pushchair, that it can take their car seats, that it's great for 2 sets of golf clubs, whatever their needs have been with that vehicle. They're generally very good. Swing across to the dealership, and because they see so many vehicles, the complacency that sits around writing some sort of description that actually talks about the vehicle, that it's been driven by the salesperson or whoever is going to write the description, should have that vehicle for a couple of days, drive it, look at what past customers that have purchased those vehicles before, what they've said about the car, what was important to them. And another great tip is when you're taking a trade-in into the dealership and upgrading that car for a customer. If it's a vehicle that you would typically keep and then retail out, that is your opportune time to create the listing description off that past customer's experience. So asking them, what do they love about the car? Why have they had it for the last 4 years? That'll give you some kind of structure to kind of write your next description for when you go and throw it out online. So that's another thing. And then jumping across to the dealership side of things, we still see a lot of dealerships, they kind of talk about all these points about why they are different or how long they've been in business. But they still miss a number of areas. And the biggest one is where any dealership's got any form of undercover area or showroom or warehouse, actually talking about the ability to come in out of the weather and view a car, and just educate that customer online. No different to what you do if they were on the phone asking you or in person. It's just really thinking about, what do we tell our customers face to face, and are we conveying the exact same message online on our website, on our listings? Because ultimately a customer shouldn't learn anything new once they arrive at the dealership. They should know who you are, what your cars are like, what your people are like, what your business is like, where your location is. If you have an opportunity where you have multiple languages spoken in the dealership, you should convey that. So yeah, it's a good thing to kind of go through and even write down what are the things that differentiate our dealership or that we're proud of, or that we communicate to every customer that arrives at the dealership, and then kind of do a bit of a sense check online and go, are we actually saying these same things in our listings, our website, and wherever else we appear online?
70% of people don't actually know what they're looking for. They don't have a specific make and model in mind when they first start looking. So like Mark said, if I've got kids, do I want a car seat? The child hooks, do I want something that's going to fit golf clubs? Do I need it to be easy to park, or do I need it to be cheap on gas? And we so often see people's listings that say 5 seats, leather interior, but you would never allow a salesperson to say that when they come in the yard to somebody. So really just, this is your modern virtual yard, I suppose, is any online listing, is telling them all about the car.
That's a great point, Ange. And imagine if salespeople kind of just regurgitated the one-line sentences that it's leather, automatic, and it's mint.
Yeah, 5 seats, leather interior, and walked away. You just wouldn't do that. So, and we find a lot of the time is the purchasers actually know just as much about the vehicle, if not more, about the vehicle when they get to the yard than what the salespeople do, because they've just done all of their research online from the comfort of their home, because that's what the internet allows us to do these days. So they walk in and they really know what they want to buy. And most likely they have researched your business as well and seen online reviews or any feedback. So asking people what they think and then making changes if they aren't happy with something.
Yeah, and I think that's that stat around I don't know what the rule is, whether it's 80% of people do research online these days when buying a car, whatever that number is. I think in the time that we're in now, with level 3, and then as we progress to level 2, I think you'll see that number will push even higher to be as close to 100% as it could be with people that have access to the internet.
I'm going to ask a question that it almost crosses the line and between the perfecting your listing and the trustworthiness, and it came up in a session we had last week, and that was around the fact that not every used car is perfect, particularly with some of the fresh inputs that are coming through and being sold in your relatively fast turnover. There are blemishes, there are cosmetic issues with some vehicles and so forth. And the discussion was out there where we're now having to push through vehicles in a people are largely done on the transaction before they necessarily even jump in the car and drive it. If you've got photos of issues, of blemishes, of problems, should they be shown on the vehicle in the listing, or is that something perhaps for the email discussion afterwards, that, you know, here are these issues, here's a picture of them? Do you do that up front, or do you wait until you're in communication with the buyer?
I think it's a hard one. I think dealers will be faced with some will be honest about the description and some won't be. And I think it's that whole quandary that they face of, do I be honest and risk not getting somebody, or do I deal with that after the fact, get the inquiry and then handle it so people are comparing apples with apples as far as the vehicles are concerned. I know it's something that's practiced a lot more with out-of-town buyers, where they're purchasing a vehicle sight unseen, and that vehicle is going to go on a transporter down the country or up the country to a buyer. I think dealerships there will tend to make sure everything is covered. So I think the way people have handled online out-of-town buyers in the last few years, I think that's more the transition that they have to do now with handling people that can't come and necessarily visit the dealership and spend heaps of time browsing cars. But yeah, Ange, if you've got anything to add.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and to be honest, I don't have the perfect answer for it.
No.
I think that being upfront and you know, that trust thing is so big, as you know what's going on, it's good to have it in the listing. I think that if you're doing video walkarounds, it is something that you should be pointing out. And again, your price should reflect anything that might be different to a perfect vehicle.
It's just something you touched on there. I mean, how should we be tying video walkarounds and video content for vehicles into listings?
Sorry, could you say that again?
How should we be tying, you mentioned video there, video walkarounds, how should we be tying video content and those kind of services into your listings?
Yeah, I've seen it done really well and I've seen it done really badly. Putting a link to your video or your YouTube video, or sending it in an email when you, if somebody inquires. A personalized one. I did hear a fact the other day that said if you say the person's name 3 times, it also really resides with them. I think it's a really, really good thing to do. And like Mark said, out-of-town buyers, they can't walk around the car. So it's a really nice virtual way for them to do that before it goes in the transporter. And now when people aren't wanting to go and visit yards as much as they were, that's also you know, a perfect way to show a vehicle. So it's a virtual car yard, isn't it?
Now, the people can't necessarily wander around a car and have a look, but at the same time, they also can't be put in front of a business manager to sell them finance and insurance. So would it be fair to say you now need to really more than ever be promoting those services and tying that into how you're listing vehicles, Ange?
Yeah, 50% of people are expecting a dealer listing online to be better than a private seller's, be better and different. And that includes them wanting to see what other things that they provide, finance, warranties, trade-ins, all of these things that are going to make their life easier, is what is a bonus of dealing with a dealer. Finance is such a big one. It increases profit. And that stat I said before, if 25% of people, a quarter of people who are purchasing don't know that you have finance, if you could advertise it and you could get that other quarter to buy from you, that's just a great profit booster.
And any particular tips on how you should be listing those services within the vehicle listing? I mean, what's your tips for doing that?
Yeah, we had two main ones that people specifically pointed out that they wanted was make it easy for me to use. So, a really easy application or a quick inquiry box. Call me back, talk to me about it. And the other one was good interest rates. So they are more savvy. Especially with home interest rates being so low, people are starting to hear this around the New Zealand, and they understand that they're getting low, and they would like to see that reflected in dealerships as well.
Mark, you come from an F&I background as well. What's your take on how you should be promoting those finance and insurance products through your online listings?
Yeah, I think it's something that every potential customer needs to be educated on what is available. And listings allow you to communicate a degree of information, and there's various options for, I guess, educating on finance and insurance and presence that can be available. You can go a bit deeper on your own dealership website there and get a lot more specific, and you got a lot more real estate as such to talk about those things. But yeah, making it easy for people, educating them. I think we're entering a very interesting time around finance, especially with affordability and certainty of job security and all those sorts of things. So it's going to be really important. I think financiers are going to play a big role there as far as responsible lending is concerned, and making sure that they're doing the right thing by the consumer. And enabling them to buy a car, but something that they can certainly afford to buy. So there's different options for dealers. We're working on something at the moment which will allow a customer to go much deeper in that finance and insurance journey and build a deal around a car. So it's something that we've seen for quite some time, that people are wanting to transact a lot more online than what we've been enabling them to do in the past. So there's a bit of catch up to play there, and I think the various listing sites, including Trade Me, recognise that finance and insurance is a part of that buying journey, and enabling a customer to go a little bit deeper and do what they need to do online. There's a whole lot that don't want to talk to a dealership until they're really a long way down in their decision. So I think we'll see a lot evolve in the marketplace over the balance of this year with how people can do that. But it's important, and it's important to educate as much as you can, for sure.
Now, what tools does Trade Me have to allow you to build finance quoting into your listings, Ange?
We have a finance product. There's a section there that talks about why should I, use finance from you. So like Mark said, just a little bit of education in there about what would be beneficial about taking finance from a dealer rather than maybe putting it on your mortgage. And we give a weekly price on there, and there's a availability to change deposit and monthly fees in there as well.
Fantastic. Moving on, I guess, to trust a little. This still crosses across both websites because you guys have a bit of have a relationship here. Mark, Motor Central have the Buyer Score product. Can you tell us a little bit about Buyer Score And how's that really kind of risen in importance as we're going into this period where people are essentially selling without the person necessarily able to come and speak to them face to face on the yard?
Yeah, I think buyer score right now, I think there's only about 300 dealerships in the country that are using buyer score, which I guess, I'm not sure whose figures you want to look at, but our count, there's only about 1,150 physical motor vehicle dealerships in the country. So, there's almost a third of them are using buyer score and doing so with some great results. But I think, any form of online ratings and reviews where customers kind of get to have their say is important. I think where buyer score kind of differentiates itself to the traditional Google reviews or Facebook reviews is that they're from verified buyers that have actually purchased within that dealership, not just a customer that is come in for a test drive and not purchased, or various fake reviews that could exist out of there, both positive and negative. So buyer score certainly holds its place as far as verified buyers. Today we've had over 70,000 surveys received from purchasers of vehicles, giving ratings and reviews on dealerships. It's a solid number. We think it's continuing to build towards a really good level, especially when you look at the percentage of people that would recommend that dealership to family and friends. We use that as a good gauge, because most people take the seriousness of recommendation to family and friends. They do take it quite seriously, and it's not just something that they do on a whim. So out of 70,000 car buyers over the last couple of years, for 96% of them to be in a position where they'd recommend that dealership to family and friends, says a lot about those dealerships that are using this sort of tool. As far as its importance today, I think it's always been important and growing in importance. I've always maintained that that ratings and reviews for people, aiding them in their purchasing decisions. There's endless statistics and studies and research done on how many people do use these reviews to guide them in their purchasing decision. And I think when you're at that moment in time of cutting down a number of dealerships, or you are hesitant about buying, especially from out of town, having a source where you can educate yourself based off past customer experiences is really positive. And I just very quickly before this jumped onto buyer score and did a real quick scan across a few dealerships to grab some, customer reviews that had been left. And I think when you I'll share my screen and talk to them, and hopefully this process works. Let me know if it doesn't. Sorry.
It worked.
And my screen. You seeing that screen there or not? Yes.
Yep, we are.
The buy score one?
Yep.
Yeah, okay, cool. So these first few here, the first one, there's a dealership name there. I'm not sure if you can read that. It's for genuine vehicle imports, but there's a customer here that's purchased their vehicle sight unseen when they're still in Melbourne, and then had it delivered to their home when they arrived. It talks about the car being in excellent condition and represents their value for money, and talks about how good the dealership was. So someone really reading that, it just gives them an extra layer of confidence. There's another one down here for stadium cars, where a customer has travelled from Wellington down to Christchurch to purchase. And this particular customer as well, along with numerous other customers that I know have purchased from stadium cars, as an example, when they've been buying out of town, and we've got a growing number of dealerships all around the country that are telling us this, the out of town buyers in particular are referencing buyer score by name in terms of why the reason was they had the comfort in purchasing from that dealership. So it's a really, really good thing. There's another one here from ISL Cars, talking about the dealership being extremely helpful, willing to work around their time constraints, and then deliver the vehicle to their new home as they couldn't get there to pick it up. This sort of stuff's really good. Here's a couple here for Farmer Auto Village. You know, there's very first one here is this customer's given a huge amount of feedback. It's excellent. This particular customer has not only not bought a new vehicle for 11 years, but they've purchased it sight unseen via the internet, and they're even kind of going, what was I thinking myself? But when you look at the feedback that's through here around how the salesperson has interacted with the dealership, it's really positive. And it's these sorts of messages and feedback that customers have given the dealership, that by having them available, whether it be via the BuyerScore site, whether it's via your Trade Me listings, whether it's via your website, and we can talk about how you leverage these sorts of ratings and reviews. This sort of stuff is considerably influential in the car buying journey of prospective customers.
How do you leverage it? I mean, how do you get that out to the customers? You mentioned through Trade Me listings. What's the best way to do that?
The first thing is to start actually utilizing, and you know, I don't really want, this is not really about plugging BuyerScore, but it's just an absolute no-brainer. Even if you aren't at a point where you want to publish your reviews externally, you just want to take the internal feedback. Just the value that provides is incredible, because you can learn very quickly where did you fall down in the process, or what do you do extremely well. The stuff you do extremely well, how do you educate prospective buyers on, this is what we do really well. And then the stuff that you haven't done that well, that gives you the opportunity to enhance that experience for customers, because that's then the difference between you know, getting a sale with that next customer or not. As far as leveraging it, once you've kind of make that kind of decision, because it's private to the dealership to start with, but once you make the decision to publish it, you are publishing all your good and your bad reviews. There's no way of getting around that. So being able to leverage it online is very important. With Trade Me, there has been no way for dealerships to capture feedback. I guess in the past, when you compare it to a private listing, when we sell items from our home or whatever it may be, we accumulate feedback and reviews. And dealerships now have the ability to publish their BuyerScore ratings and reviews with their Trade Me listings, which adds another significant component of, I guess, builds on that trust when a customer's browsing and looking between dealerships. I've always said there's going to be a point in time where there's those that are rated and the unrated, and customers will make up their own mind on why someone is and isn't. If they can't find a BuyerScore rating, they're probably then going to jump across to maybe Google or Facebook ratings and see what that says. That's a lot more, I guess, ruthless and out of control, because they're not necessarily from verified buyers. So there's definitely a difference there. But as far as leveraging it, yeah, definitely Trade Me listings is a great one. With dealership's website, whether you use one of most central websites or you use an external website, get your BuyerScore reviews on there. We can get, you know, with our sites, we have live testimonials flowing into sections. We've had a massive increase in dealerships over the last 3 to 4 weeks, upgrading their websites to have BuyerScore in there, and take up a prominent section of real estate, purely to educate the customer on what past customers' experiences have been like. And I think that will make a difference when, you know, that face-to-face trust can't be built as much, and it is going to be based off the communication they get from the dealership, but also what they read online. So I think, yeah, leveraging it wherever you can is a great thing, because it does influence people's purchasing decisions for sure.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. You buy just about anything online worth more than about $100 these days, and you'll go and read a dozen reviews of both the product and where you're buying it from. That's something that seems to be somewhat underserved within the automotive market in New Zealand.
Yeah, you did right, and I think it's you know, from when we first launched BuyerScore, I think there's a lot of skepticism. Dealers are traditionally worried about being reviewed online, but I think we haven't. I mean, every dealership that does utilize BuyerScore has been not only pleasantly surprised with how the feedback that they've received, but they've generally been blown away by it. And they're like, wow, we only thought that people that had bad things to say about the dealership would be the ones that talk to us. But as our statistics say, I mean, 70-odd thousand surveys back in so far, and 96% of them are pretty positive. It's a big number. And it goes to show that the media that beats up motor vehicle dealerships are kind of got it wrong in that sense, because the majority of buyers, once they've had a good experience buying from a dealership, they're a dealership buyer for life. It's so easy being able to trade the vehicle, as Ange said before, with finance and insurance offerings as well. It far outweighs the private seller. And in today's, I guess, world with COVID and health and safety and all the rest of it, a dealership's putting their hand up and they're going to operate within certain guidelines. And I don't think you can necessarily guarantee that from a private seller of a vehicle. So I think it's another key thing that dealerships should be leveraging to educate their customers on why buy from a dealership. Don't be afraid of Consumer Guarantees Act and all those other bits and pieces. There's so much protection that sits there, and I think it's a good thing.
Just to cut over to you for a second, Ange, do you or Tramy have any thoughts on what dealers can do to really make themselves stand out and separate themselves from those private vendors that are on your site? What makes the difference for people to look at those dealers rather than a private car?
I think it's about finding what your point of difference is, and that could be different for every dealership. I've seen some really great dealerships where they do a great kids section where, and they sell certain vehicles that appeal to young families. And so their kids can then go play in that kids section, or dealerships who specialize maybe in American muscle cars, and they provide a different kind of service, a specialized test drive or whatever it is. Finding what your point of difference is for your own dealership, and then thinking about how do you effectively communicate that.
Mark, is there any particular type of buyer that using a review product like that really works for?
I think every buyer. That's the reality. I think it's definitely been leveraged a little bit more towards dealers referencing their ratings and reviews for their out-of-town buyers. They've been quite proactive at that, and I think that's led to some great conversion of business. But I think it appeals to all buyers, and I think I know of some dealers that are incredibly proactive with buyer score, to the point that every single customer that walks on the dealership, they actually get asked if they've seen their dealership's buyer score ratings online. The dealership backs their ratings and their reviews that sit there, just to help, I guess, build even more credibility, even in a face-to-face perspective. Because if that customer has been looking at a vehicle privately or been looking at it from another dealership, I think the industry as a whole has a massive chance to kind of, I guess, rise up and take a little bit more market share back from the private seller that has grown in the last 10 or 15 years. But yeah, I think it's all buyers. Before, yeah, definitely leveraged a little bit more towards the out of town because it was easy. But again, it's just educating every single person that touches base with the business, and it's not just the ones that have looked at it on TradeMe or looked at it on the dealership's website. It's in your email communication to them. If they have any uncertainty or concerns, I'd be referencing specific reviews, finding them, sharing them with them, having the different graphics and badges that we provide to educate the customer is a good thing, and let them do their research about the dealership. So 100% of customers.
Thanks to you, Ange, for what will be my last question for today. I think some dealers at the moment are potentially looking at their cash flow. Things are going to be pretty tight, I suspect, for the next little bit. But now it's definitely not the time to be reducing the number of vehicles you're listing online, is it? I know you guys at TradeMe have done some wonderful things to support your dealer customers out there. Everyone should be pushing everything online they can at the moment. Is that fair?
Yeah, we have. We've we really want to help our dealership community out I think we've made that pretty clear with offering our rebate for level 4 and for level 3 until dealers are back up and trading. I mean, we know they can trade now if they wish to. However, we'd just like to support in the right ways. We think that's the best thing to do. Yeah, definitely having all of your vehicles online is always a good idea, not just right now, but right now is a great time for people to sit and browse at home and be able to see all the colors of if you've got 10 Suzuki Swifts, put all 10 of them on. Somebody might not want a red one, they might want the black one that you haven't put online. That's it, coming back to that, really make it easy. It's really, really about make it easy. If 70% of people don't know what type of car they're looking for, then show them all of the options.
Exactly. Right, let's move to a few of the questions we've got coming through here.
I said there's some there on the chat and the Q&A, Richard.
Yep, I've got a few here. I'm going to open with what's a statement, not a question. We've got Daniel, the Southland Isuzu team present and tuning in, watching on the big screen. Woohoo. Which is good. Hopefully everyone who's watching's got some social distancing going on there. I'll put this one probably one to you, Mark. We've got Anchor asking, what can financial companies do to help dealers to create more business for each other? The language isn't quite right there, but I think the sentiment is, what do you think finance operators can be doing to assist, and we'll maybe focus this down, but assist their dealers on selling finance perhaps online or away from traditional formats?
Oh, so it's referencing what can finance companies do?
Yeah.
I think the key there really, and obviously I'm not a finance company in that sense to really speak to it, but I think it's about giving dealerships the tools that they need to educate customers on the journey as early on, but make sure that the purchaser is really informed on what they can learn online as they go through the process. I think when a customer is really informed, they will go deeper into the journey, and I think that will aid in dealer conversion. I don't know what the numbers are these days, but my feeling on it is about 90% of vehicles on the road are financed in some way, shape or form. And there's only about 10% that are paid with true cash. And if you look at the average dealership finance penetration, whatever number you want to pick it at, whether it's 30%, 40% or 50%, there's still a very big percentage that dealerships do not convert into finance. And some of that is by what Ange just talked about before. They just haven't educated the customer that they have finance available. So that's the first thing, is educating 100% of the customers. Don't just judge a book by its cover and assume a certain customer needs finance. Offer it to every single person. And then it's about how they get it online and with their website, and then from their listings and wherever the customer's eyeballs are. It's about how do you educate and take them on a finance path that is complementary to their needs. So what could finance companies do? I guess it's just continue to build tools that help dealerships be more successful in that area. I think, we've got a lot of good technology now, and it's just about enabling dealerships to do that. And if the technology doesn't sit there, it's still how can the dealer educate properly and compliantly to his customers about finance. Yeah. Ange,
question for you. Is Trade Me looking at supporting 3D tours or walkarounds? I'm assuming that means within listings. That's from Daniel Featonby.
Hi, Dan. Well, I mean, I'm not in product, but it's we have a lot of things on our product roadmap that we want to build every day, but prioritizing them has to come into play. We don't have 3D in the immediate future that I'm aware of, but hopefully, yes.
What's the best way for someone to put a video within their listing at the moment? What functionality is there to either put one within their gallery or a link within the story? What's the advice?
We actually have a section where you can put a a YouTube video link in. So you would do a YouTube video of the vehicle, upload it into your account. Also a recommendation there would be to switch off advertising, so not lots of ads are popping up for the consumer when they're watching that. And then loading that into your vehicle management system and then sending that through to Trade Me, and that will come on all of your listings.
So Daniel, arguably that functionality is already there in regards to Walkarounds if you do it through video and YouTube, but I guess it's 3D maybe for the future. That could be fairly interesting. I know we've had some new vehicle dealerships in New Zealand experiment a little bit with virtual reality walkarounds of vehicles, but I guess
I mean, I know Tesla does it, but yeah, we're not sending out any virtual goggles yet.
I think if you go to Volvo, first of all, in Auckland, they can put a set of goggles on your head and you can go for a tour of the vehicle. But the problem with that, of course, is that's within the dealership environment, so not really viable right at this moment.
Just to add to that, I guess if you can't, you know, have videos loaded through to Trade Me or whatever it may be, because you don't have any the ability to do that to a quality that you want to put up, I think it's still something that you should be offering every single customer that does require with the dealership. Offer them the service of doing whether it's some sort of video calling or FaceTime or whatever it may be, to get them on the line with the vehicle and take them through it and literally do it in a kind of virtual world, but offer it to every single customer as well. Just because it's not sitting in your listing because you haven't taken one of the vehicle, it's far more personal if you can kind of engage with that customer and take them on the journey as if they were there face to face. So yeah, regardless of what sits there now, I just still let every customer know that you can do it.
And just to add here from my perspective, someone who's learned a lot of video stuff over the last few years, is a saying that goes around, don't let perfect be the enemy of good enough. So just because you're new to video and just because you don't necessarily have a big flash camera, it does not stop you from doing video. Getting your average iPhone or your average Samsung Galaxy, walking around the car, filming, maybe just talking about the car as you're doing it, is going to be good enough quality for pretty much any viewer to get a better understanding of what the car is, and if that didn't exist. So I would suggest don't let it's perfect technology, having some big flash rig or a crew doing it, it's just not necessary at this stage.
100% agree on that one.
Question from Anna to you, Mark. Buyer score versus Google reviews. You kind of sort of answered this already, but
is that literally the question?
Yep, that's literally
okay. Good question, Anna. I think it was. Buyer score versus Google reviews. I think the reality is with Google reviews is anybody can leave a review, and I think a lot of people know that. Whether you have dealt with the particular business or not, you can leave a positive or negative or neutral review about the company. And there's been lots of examples where dealerships have had negative reviews left, and they have been with people that they have never dealt with. And it's very difficult to, Google don't pull down the reviews very quickly or easily. So I think, yes, Google reviews are important. I think dealerships have put a lot of effort into trying to obtain Google reviews over the last 5 or 6 years, or however long it's kind of been around, probably longer. But I think what we've seen, especially with dealerships that have been quite proactive with Google reviews and then gone and used something that actually communicates with people that have done business with them, with buyer score. I mean, our completion rate at the moment sits at 50.26%, which on any, I mean, it's still surprised us to this day, but on any global kind of benchmarks on survey completion, that blows most right out of the water, and just tells us that buyers are really engaged to give feedback. The more online research they do and that they come across buyer score or online reviews on their journey, whether it be via Trade Me or the dealership's website, the more likely they are to also complete feedback when they receive the request to do so. One of the franchise dealerships down in Tauranga, I mean, they average between 78 and 80% response rate on their buyer score surveys. They're very good at educating the customer that they'll be getting this survey. And you just can't get that response rate on Google because people have to go and either have a Gmail account, they have to have a Gmail account and log in and kind of go through that process. And it's not that easy for some of those customers. And, you know, within a month or 2 or 3, dealerships' buyer score reviews tend to exceed what it's taken them 2 or 3 years to get under Google reviews. Google recognized buyer score. So what we've found is on the Google My Business page, Google will display just below the Google ratings, there'll be a section there where it will reference reviews from the web, and buyer score features quite heavily there. And buyer score significantly contributes to the organic search on any dealership. The results we've seen there are crazy. It used to be if you typed the dealership name and then reviews or used car dealer and reviews, buyer score would feature pretty quick on that first page of Google. But what we've seen now is even absent the word reviews, just typing a dealership name or used car dealerships, it will feed the reviews that buyer score have provided feature pretty heavily. Google may change something in the algorithm that displays search results differently, but people are pretty engaged with buyer score. And, you know, we even look at the number of people that have still been looking at buyer score reviews, even through this lockdown period. The numbers haven't, they're just under half of what we'd normally experience. So that still tells us that there's a good chunk of active buyers in the market doing their homework. I think dealers have got to remember as well that, you know, over the last 5 weeks, traditionally there would have been maybe 25,000-30,000 cars sold. I don't know if that number's right, but I'll go with it. You know, I know that those buyers aren't all lining up right now, but there are going to be hundreds, if not thousands, of buyers in the market right now that need a vehicle for whatever their reasons are. So I think, sorry, I got a little bit off topic, but Google reviews versus buyer score. The easiest way to sum it up is they're verified purchases versus anybody. And probably what will take you 1 year to 2 years trying to drum up Google reviews, you'll probably do organically without putting any effort into within maybe 6 months of buyer score, if that.
Fantastic. Ange, another one for you. Do buyers know what model this is from Anna. Do buyers know what model they want before searching on TradeMe, or do you guys find they more tend to browse and work out what it is from there?
I think I said it a couple of times today. The 70% of people don't know what specific make and model they're looking for when they start their search. You know, people are typing in keywords, whether it's that 4-wheel drive, 4x4, and so using all those things in your sentencing when you're writing the descriptions about the vehicle is really helpful. I think, you know, gone are the days of people, and very much gone now, where people park up their cars on one side of the street and they walk the road and they you know, visually view all of the vehicles and they can touch, see, and talk to all the salespeople. This is where people are just really spending lots of time online, researching what they want, what meets their needs. And I think using your customer insights and questioning people, and you know, regularly changing that up with your sourcing as well to match what people are really looking for, is helpful. And that's why that writing those really good descriptions about each vehicle and spending that bit of time. We don't have any more excuses now why people are not writing good listings. I know it is really hard to write good listings about every car, especially when you've got 100 cars on the yard. Writing a little verb about all of them is difficult, but just touching on some key points. What is the vehicle? Why would I buy it? You know, what extra features or benefits does it have? And then why would I buy from, you know, your dealership? Kind of summarizes all of those things and would cover off any key benefits that people were looking for a specific vehicle.
It kind of reinforces why you should be writing that little blurb rather than just that basic listing, because you're more likely in natural language going to come out with those terms that people are thinking rather than necessarily just technical stuff about the vehicle. Yeah,
and Mark mentioned earlier on in our conversation was, you know, public or private sellers sell a vehicle faster than a dealer does, and the reason behind that is they're so much more emotive about the vehicle, and they only have one vehicle to write about. So a private seller will, you know, really talk about how their car has been garaged all its life and it's gone for regular servicing and it fits their golf clubs and it's easy to park and good on gas, where, you know, a lot of dealerships that we see are those 5-seat leather interior, and then that's it. And so they're really not selling the car, and then they're putting $40,000 on the price tag, and I know that I wouldn't pay $40,000 to be treated like that if I walked on in a yard. So
last questions for you, Mark. This is from AHG New Zealand. Mark, it's fair to say new vehicle buyers are already quite well surveyed from distributor and or dealers post-sale. What kind of take-up and feedback have you had from franchise dealers for buyer score?
Yeah, it's a good question, actually, and rightly so. I think from the new vehicle perspective, the manufacturers do quite a good job as far as surveying those customers, and whether that be post-sale or through service departments or whatever. As far as the used vehicle sales part of the majority of franchises, they tend to get left out in the manufacturers surveying. So the dealerships, the franchise dealerships that we have using buyer score right now, that is done so across their used vehicle sales within their dealerships, and been working very well. They're super impressed. The feedback is crazy from them, really, in terms of how it's exceeded their expectations, as far as not only the information that they're getting back in about the dealership, but their response rate is really, really high, and then how they can then leverage that online. I think for new vehicle sales, the market is a lot smaller. I'm probably going to have somebody disagree with me here, but essentially, when you look at across the, whether it be whatever brands it may be, Ford dealerships, there's X number of Ford dealerships in Auckland and in the country, and I would say is a little bit more of there's a slightly more captive audience. When someone that's looking at buying a new Ford, they will look at that dealership or that dealership, and you can provide that feedback. I think when you step down into the used vehicle layer within franchise and your independent used, there's a much bigger playing field. You know, not only is there the franchise used stock, but then there's another 50 or 60 used vehicle dealerships that have competing second-hand stock as well. So when you at new car buyer level, I think there's still influence there, but the influence from ratings and reviews goes even deeper and bigger when you get into that used vehicle space. So again, I think been successful with that. There's still a lot more franchises that could use the solution for sure. Why some of them haven't? My guess is I'm not too sure, actually, because it's pretty straightforward, but that's their own call there. But yeah, it works good, especially, and I think on the used vehicle side, it's not being taken care of from the manufacturer's perspective. So yeah.
Fantastic. Look, I think that's all the questions. Thank you so much, guys, for being with us today, and thank you to our panelists. If you guys want to spend a second here just to say who's the best person to talk to if people are interested either in working further on their listings with Trade Me or working with Motor Central. Ange, is it people best to contact their local or their regional Trade Me rep? Who's the best person for people to speak to?
Yeah, like I said, we've just done this amazing survey. We've got so much information and I had so much to share, but it's kind of nerve-wracking being in front of everybody. So talk to your account manager. They are well-versed on everything that we've been researching right now. And they have so much awesome information to share at the moment. So please have them in, call them, talk to them, email them. They'll be more than happy to talk to you.
And Mark, if people want to talk to someone further about Motor Central services or buyer score specifically?
Yeah, I guess people that are familiar with our team on the ground, then they can touch base with them for sure. For those that aren't, then flicking through an email directly to myself, mark@motorcentral.co.nz, or we have a general email line, client solutions@motorcentral.co.nz, and it can go off to the respective team member in whatever part of the country. So yeah, all good. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. And we hope to see you later on in the week. We've got on Thursday at 2 p.m. The Mark team coming in to talk to us about loyalty and how that's going to play a role coming through these level 3 and hopefully onwards up to level 2 times. So thanks so much, and hopefully you're back at work and managing to trade during level 3. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. See ya.